Today's adventure takes us to Mount Carmel Cemetery here in Hillside, Illinois. Now this is so far the biggest cemetery I've ever been in. One of the biggest cemeteries probably in the country, with almost 150,000 graves. Beautiful markers in the cemetery, as you can see behind me. But the reason why I'm doing this today, and I want to point out, this is my 100th episode on YouTube, my 100th video. And I need to thank everyone that watches it, because if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be putting these videos up on YouTube. So thank you very much for making that happen. So today I thought we'll do something a little bit special. The city of Chicago was known for its mobsters back in the 1920s, and that was due to prohibition. Alcohol was illegal, so there was a lot of illegal alcohol reigns going on. And three primary gangs in Chicago ran these reigns. The Northside Irish Gang, which was more than just Irish. The Westside Gang, which was run by the Genna brothers. And the Southside Gang, which came here from New York and was eventually run by none other than Al Capone. And we know Al Capone is synonymous with mob activity and gangsters. So we're going to find all these graves today, and I have some stories to tell you about each one of them. So come join me as we explore this wonderful old Mount Carmel Cemetery. So we come up to the Genna family mausoleum. Now the Gennas were considered the Westside Gang in Chicago, rivals to Capone and the Northside Gang, who was run by OBanion at the time. Now, there are 6 brothers in the Genna family, and we have Angelo, Bloody Angelo Genna. Now, he was part of the Genna Sicilian crime family who came here from Sicily, and they started selling extra alcohol at cut-rate prices outside their territory, which didn't sit well with the Northside Gang, who at that time was run by Dean OBanion. And OBanion then began hijacking their shipments, and if we can see in here, hopefully we can see in here, a little difficult to see. I think it's probably the best view we're going to get. So Angelo wasn't happy that OBanion started hijacking their shipments, so he was a mastermind behind the assassination of Dean OBanion. Now, OBanion and his Northside Gang owned a casino along with the Torrio syndicate, which is the Southside Gang, which Capone was a part of. Al Capone, OBanion, and others were tallying the week's profits, and it was mentioned that Angelo had dropped the mark, which is basically an IOU. OBanion wasn't very happy about that, and he knew Angelo and that he was hijacking his shipments, so he called Angelo and demanded payment. So Angelo took that as a personal insult, and on November 10th, 1924, 2 men walked into OBanion's flower shop and shot him 5 times and killed him. And of course, this erupted into a full-scale war, and the Northside Gang, in revenge on the Genna brothers, during a high-speed car chase on May 25th, 1925, Genna was shot and wounded and crashed his car into a lamppost, and he died in the hospital the next day. So since this became a full-scale war, the next brother, Mike the Devil Genna, he was also one of the brothers in the gang. And back on June 13th, 1925, Genna had a shootout with the Northside Gang, now headed by Henry Weiss, after OBanion's death. After the shootout, 3 Genna men were chased by Chicago police, including Mike the Devil Genna. Genna men had killed 2 officers and injured a 3rd. Police shot Genna in the leg, severing an artery. Genna died in the ambulance after kicking a police officer in the face, so he kind of got a little revenge there before his death. And then another brother, Genna. After the deaths of his brothers Angelo, Mike, and Antonio, Pete, Jim, and Sam, the remaining 3 brothers, fled to Sicily. And the 3 brothers did end up coming back to the U.S. with permission, and they ran an olive oil business until they died. So Antonio, called Tony the Gentleman Genna, on July 8th, 1925, Tony was asked to meet by one of his friends, Antonio Spano. Not knowing that the meeting was set up by the Northside Gang, the 2 men met in front of a grocery store, and when they shook hands, 2 other men stepped out and shot him in the chest and abdomen. So that is the 3rd Genna brother that died by being shot. As we come up to another famous mobster's grave, as we see the tall obelisk here of Dean OBanion. Now OBanion, he was the head of the Northside Irish Gang, which were more than just Irish. There was all kinds of ethnicities into that gang. And he ran his operation out of Schofield Flour Company, which is across the street from Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago. So one day, OBanion, Capone, and others were tallying the week's profits because they all took part in a gambling operation. And it was mentioned by OBanion that Angelo had dropped a mark, which basically at the time an IOU. OBanion, who didn't like Angelo anyways, gave him a call and called him out on it. Angelo wasn't very happy about being called out on it and took that as a personal insult in order to hit an OBanion. On November 10th, 1924, 2 men walked into OBanion's flower shop looking for flowers. And when they shook OBanion's hand, shots rang out and he was shot 5 times and killed. And of course this erupted into a full-scale war against the Northside Gang and the Westside Gang, which was the Genna brothers. And the Northside Gang did get their revenge. Here's the mausoleum of the next notorious Chicago mobster. His name, Earl Jaime Weiss. Beautiful mausoleum there. Now when OBanion was killed, remember OBanion was the head of the Northside Gang, Weiss took over for OBanion. I don't know if you can see in here. Now Weiss is the, he's right here at the bottom. You're not going to be able to see it. Sorry folks, my gimbal's getting in the way. It's right there at the bottom left. So anyways, he was said to be the only man that Al Capone feared. And on October 11th, 1926, as he was crossing State Street in Chicago, 4 men opened fire and killed him. And I'm sure it was Al Capone's men. See, once the Northside Gang knocked off the Westside Gang, it was just Al Capone's Southside Gang versus the Northside Gang, and Capone outgunned the Northside Gang and pretty much had the run of Chicago after that, which then became the Chicago Outfit, which became the notorious mobsters in Chicago. There's the mausoleum of Earl Jaime Weiss. Here we're coming up on the Ambrosio mausoleum. Now there's pictures of this one on Find a Grave as the resting place for Vincent Drucci, who was in the Northside Gang. Although looking inside here, I do not see a vault in here for Vincent Drucci. Everything's D'Ambrosio. So I'm not sure if he's in here or not, but he was a member of the Northside Gang under Dean OBanion. And he was an enforcer actively involved in numerous violent incidents. On January 25th, 1925, he and two others, including Bugs Moran, who was also a member of the Northside Gang, ambushed Al Capone but failed to kill him. On January 27th, 2 days later, he and two others attempted to kill Johnny Torrio while he was shopping with his wife. Although Torrio was severely wounded, he did survive. On May 25th of 1925, he killed mobster Angelo Genna, and on July 8th killed Tony Genna. In 1927, he was arrested, and after an argument in the back of the police car with a police officer, he was shot 4 times by Detective Dan Healy and passed away. Now, Find a Grave does have this as his final resting place. I do not see a name for him in there, but maybe he went under a different name at that point. I don't know. And this is probably the most famous mobster in Chicago. That's Capone, of course, Al Capone, and he's got a couple of brothers, Ralph and Salvatore, named Frank. So Al Capone, he quit school in 8th grade and began working with Johnny Torrio in New York. His mother, Teresa, his father, Gabriel. And he moved his operation to Chicago, Torrio did, in 1921, and brought Capone with him. When Torrio retired to Florida, Capone took over, and Capone was responsible for the famous St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, when 7 members of the Bugs Moran gang were murdered. But Capone was indicted in tax evasion. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison, and he died in his Miami, Florida home of cardiac arrest due to syphilis in 1947. And this is where he rests. And then he has his brother here, Ralph James Capone. He was nicknamed Bottles. He was the older brother of Al. And he got his nickname because he ran a legitimate business distributing bottled water. He was imprisoned for tax evasion, but it was never proven that he was part of the brothers' mobster network, although I'm sure he was. And then we have Salvatore Capone here, Frank, is what he went by. He was one of Al's older brothers also, and he was a member of the Torrio Capone gang. Said he unleashed a terror on the city of Chicago on April 1st, 1924. He sent Southside gang members to the polling booths with machine guns and shotguns to make sure the locals voted right. Later that day, he was approached by plainclothes detectives. Shots rang out, and Capone was fatally shot by a Sergeant Philip McGurn, and he passed away. One of the most famous mobsters in history, Al Capone and his brothers. This next mobster resting place is that of Frank Nito. Frank the Enforcer Nito. He was the number 2 man for Al Capone when Al Capone ran the Southside gang, which became the Chicago outfit. And he started life as a barber, but became involved with Capone gang when he was asked to fence some stolen jewelry. He took over for Capone when Capone went to prison. He tried to shake down the Hollywood movie industry, but the crime-fighting newspaper reporter named Westbrook Pegler found out about the Hollywood shakedown and he exposed it. Now, federal investigators did succeed in indicting Nito, and the thought of prison time frightened him because he was very claustrophobic, and he was been in prison previously for a couple of years, and I guess it wasn't good. He wouldn't go back. So on March 19th, 1943, while walking along railroad tracks near his Riverside house, Nito shot and killed himself. He managed to shoot himself 3 times before he died. And that is the story of Frank the Enforcer Nito. Okay guys, this next one, I mean, look at this place. Look at this place. I mean, I could spend weeks in here. So, you know, I'm used to doing these smaller cemeteries, but, you know, for the 100th show, I wanted to do something a little more in depth. So I came into this large cemetery. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest with you. But this next mobster we're going to see here is Joseph Hoptoad Giunta, Giunta, and his stone is right here. Beautiful large stone. See here, Joseph Giunta, 1887 to 1929, and he was a high-ranking member of the Al Capone gang, but interestingly enough, he was killed by Capone. And why, you ask? Well, he planned to kill Capone and take over his operation, and he enlisted a couple of Capone's triggermen, John Scalise and Albert Anselmi, and he promised them better positions once he took over from Capone after he killed Capone. But Capone caught wind of this, like he did a lot of things, and invited the 3 men to dinner in a roadhouse somewhere in rural Indiana. And during dinner, Capone brought out an Indian club that he received as a gift, and he proceeded to beat the 3 men near to death, only then to get out his pistol and stand over each man and shoot him. Next day they were found in Hammond, Indiana. Scalise and Anselmi were returned to Sicily, but Joseph Giunta lies right here, victim of Al Capone, victim of his own greed. Another mobster shot dead. Appears to be a lot of bullets in this cemetery. Now here's a little more recent mobster buried here, Sam Giancana. People may have heard of him. He didn't die until 1975. So he was the leader of the Chicago outfit from 1957 to 1966. And it was formerly known as the Southside Gang. This was actually what Al Capone ran back in the 20s. It seemed like the Westside Gang disappeared with the death of the Genna brothers, and the Northside Gang was defeated, and the Southside Gang triumphed over the city of Chicago. So in 1965, he wouldn't talk in front of a grand jury and was jailed for more than a year for contempt. When he got out of jail, he fled to Mexico. In 1974, the Mexican authorities found him and deported Sam back to the U.S. And I don't know if we could see anything in here. And he was to appear in front of a committee. It's pretty dirty, pretty dark too. He was appeared in front of a committee which was investigating collusion with the CIA. And even though his Oak Park house was under guard by police officers, on June 19th, 1975, a gunman entered through his basement and shot him in the head and neck 7 times while he was making food in his kitchen. So no more Sam Giancana. I guess they didn't want him to talk. Guys, once again, thank you so much for watching my video and for your support here on YouTube and for subscribing to my channel. The 1920s were really something in Chicago with the mobsters and gangsters, and they did not like each other at all, and a lot of them are buried here in Mount Carmel Cemetery. There are some famous one like Dillinger. He's down in Indianapolis, so he's not even in Chicago. And Bugs Moran, he's not in Chicago either. I think he died in prison, and he's buried in some penitentiary yard somewhere. I don't remember what state it is, but thank you again for watching. And as always, until next time, you know it, keep exploring.